The wind carried secrets tonight. Not the kind that drifted through ordinary branches, but whispers that shimmered like threads of light between leaves turned to molten gold. The valley held its breath listening. Each rustle, each sigh of the forest seemed to call out to a single heartbeat standing at its edge. The sound was almost human, gentle yet urgent, like a dream trying to remember itself. The boy felt it stir within him, that low hum that had haunted his sleep for months. Beneath the horizon's fading fire, the trees glowed, as if burning from within, their trunks pulsing faintly, like veins alive with memory. He stepped closer, soil soft beneath his boots, eyes wide to the twilight. The whispers grew clearer, not words, but the ache of longing made sound. The forest was calling him, not as a stranger, but as something it had lost and now remembered. The air thickened as he moved deeper. The scent of the forest was strange, not of rot or sap, but something warm and metallic, like sunlight condensed into scent. His steps softened until even his heartbeat seemed absorbed by the soil. Around him, trunks leaned closer, their surfaces etched with faint runes that glowed like breathing veins. Somewhere, a low voice hummed beneath the earth, patient, immense, and almost kind. He reached toward a cluster of roots, twisting like fingers. They trembled beneath his touch. For a heartbeat, the forest exhaled. A wave of gold dust lifted through the branches, glittering in the dusk like awakened stars. Then came the whisper again. Closer now. Clearer. Not words, but memory. A voice that spoke directly into the part of him that never stopped dreaming. The forest's murmur shifted, no longer calling but listening. He sensed eyes where there were none. Every branch seemed to bow as he passed, and with each step, his pulse aligned more closely with the hum beneath the ground. He knelt, pressing his palm to the soil. A vision flashed, faces of those who had once walked here, dreamers swallowed by light, their voices forever woven into the roots. He gasped, the image fading, leaving the scent of rain, though no drop had fallen. Somewhere ahead, faint laughter drifted, like the echo of children who had never existed. He rose slowly, drawn toward it, though some quiet part of him knew the laughter would not be what it seemed. The laughter led him to a clearing where the trees parted like curtains. There, sunlight bled through the canopy in trembling rays. Tiny luminous beings, childlike sylphs, fragile and weightless, drifted above the moss. They circled him, whispering in tones he almost recognized, like a melody from dreams he had forgotten. One settled briefly upon his shoulder, its touch light as dust. The world shimmered. For an instant he saw himself not as he was, but as the forest remembered him. An echo of something older, already bound to its heart. The sylphs scattered when a shadow moved beyond the clearing. The air cooled. The laughter fell silent. The forest shifted again, and the whispers turned to a single resonant word, not spoken but felt, like thunder within his chest. It called to him from far ahead, beneath the great roots where the light grew dim. His breath caught. He stepped forward once more, unaware that the forest's gold began to fade behind him, dimming as though it had given part of itself away. In the deepening shade, he felt both welcomed and trapped. The forest had opened its heart, and now he was inside it. The deeper Elias walked, the quieter the forest became, until even his breath felt foreign. The gold upon the bark now glowed in slow pulses, as if the trees were breathing through him. The air grew cooler, silvered with mist that swallowed sound and shape alike. A faint humming threaded through the silence, not from the branches this time, but from beneath the earth. He could feel it in his bones, a low rhythm that echoed the pulse behind his ribs. The whisper returned, clearer now, its tone no longer curious but commanding. He understood nothing of its language, yet every syllable tugged at a hidden memory. The forest no longer felt like a place. It felt like a mind that had begun to dream him back. From behind a curtain of roots, a voice, unmistakably human, spoke. It was soft, melodic, and filled with the patience of someone who had waited far too long. Elias froze, turning slowly. Through the mist stepped a figure cloaked in deep velvet, the fabric embroidered with dim runes that glowed at their edges. The stranger's eyes caught the faintest flicker of the forest's gold, but behind them was something older. Sorrow shaped into calm. "You shouldn't have answered," the voice said, not as scolding, but as mourning. The forest shivered around them, recognizing a conversation it had tried to forget. She told him that the forest was dreaming, that every step he took inside it was a thought given form. Long ago, she said, the forest had known joy, until it began to remember its own grief. Now it slept uneasily, and those who listened too closely risked becoming its echo. Elias tried to understand, but the pull of the whispers was stronger than her warnings. They spoke of something beneath, something that wanted to wake. His heart responded like an instrument tuning itself to the forest's tone. Ariel's eyes softened with pity. She had seen this before. "The forest," she murmured, "always chooses one who can hear." They followed the roots to where the ground fell open in a slow descent. The light dimmed to a copper dusk. Here the trunks leaned inward like ribs of a slumbering giant. Strange carvings marked the soil, spirals and sigils filled with dried sap that shimmered faintly underfoot. Ariel moved with practiced caution, tracing one rune with her finger, and the forest trembled in response. "It remembers," she whispered. Elias knelt beside her, feeling the pulse rise through the ground into his hands. For a moment their reflections rippled together in the sheen of sap, and he saw not two figures, but one, bound by the same ancient call. The whispers surged suddenly, no longer distant but surrounding him, a chorus of forgotten tongues. The forest's light flared, and Elias staggered, clutching his chest as if something within him were being rewritten. Ariel reached out, but her hand stopped short. Tendrils of gold light wove between his fingers, sinking into his skin. The forest seemed to breathe his name in thousands of voices. Then silence fell, and only his heartbeat remained, glowing faintly beneath his skin. The forest had chosen him, and the dream, for better or worse, had begun again. Morning broke like a memory rather than a dawn. Pale gold filtered through the canopy, touching the mist that slept above the roots. The forest was quieter now, listening from within. Elias walked at its heart, his every step echoing faint harmonics beneath the soil. The whispers had changed, no longer coaxing, but showing. Shapes of light folded through the air. Fragments of forgotten faces, laughter turned to dust. Ariel followed at a measured distance. Her gaze weighted with recognition she would not speak. The path opened into a hollow so vast it seemed carved from silence itself, and there, rising from the earth's core, stood the elder tree, its trunk wide as a temple, its bark etched with spiraling veins of gold that pulsed like the slow rhythm of a sleeping god. The elder tree's voice entered not through the air, but through their bones. A resonance so deep, it trembled inside thought itself. Elias fell to one knee, gripping the soil as visions cascaded. A forest before time, radiant and whole. Beings of light tending to its roots, and a single shadow spreading like ink through amber veins. The dream was broken, the voice murmured, vast and sorrowful. Ariel closed her eyes, whispering a prayer older than language. Elias felt warmth gather in his palms, and when he opened them, golden dust swirled between his fingers, memories the forest could no longer hold. He understood then that he was not merely hearing the dream. He was part of its remembering. The vision shifted again, this time darker. Beneath the golden light lay something buried, wrapped in thorns and silence. The elder tree's tone grew mournful as images surfaced. A guardian once bound to protect the dream who succumbed to envy, drawing the forest's sorrow into himself until he became the Thorn King. Elias staggered under the weight of the revelation, feeling vines tighten invisibly around his chest. Ariel steadied him, her touch fleeting but firm. The forest sighed, leaves shuddered like grieving lungs. To mend the dream, the voice intoned, you must face what was exiled. And in the hollow beneath the tree, a faint crimson glow flickered, heartbeat of something imprisoned yet awake. Ariel guided him down the spiral passage beneath the elder tree, their torches reflecting on sap-slick walls. The air throbbed with heartbeat rhythm, and whispers became voices, thousands overlapping, pleading, warning. She spoke softly, explaining that each voice was a dreamer consumed by the Thorn King's despair. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became, until golden mist turned to crimson haze. Elias felt the pull intensify, as if the forest's sorrow recognized his own hidden ache. When they reached the cavern floor, the glow ahead formed a shape within amber glass. A figure kneeling, crowned with withered vines, asleep but restless in the dream's heart. The Thorn King's eyes opened, not entirely, but enough for light to leak through the cracks. The whispers vanished. Only the forest's slow breath remained. Elias felt the gaze pierce him. Recognition, regret, invitation. You carry my echo, the thought spoke without words. Ariel seized his arm, dragging him back, but the ground trembled, amber fractured with a sound like shattering glass, and song intertwined. A wave of golden dust burst upward, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. When it cleared, the figure was still bound. Yet a single thorned root reached toward Elias, pulsing faintly in rhythm with his heart. The dream had remembered him, and it would not let go. The air below the elder tree pulsed with a dim red glow. Elias stood rooted in the afterlight of what he had witnessed, the Thorn King's half-open eyes still burning behind his own. Ariel's hand trembled as she released his arm, whispering words the forest swallowed before they reached him. He could still feel the thorns pulse within his chest, echoing his heartbeat. He spoke, Elias murmured, but Ariel shook her head. No, she said. He remembered. Above them, the roots groaned as though bearing the weight of countless dreams. The forest's breath grew heavier, whispering his name in a tone of mourning. He sensed it then. The forest's dream had turned toward him, no longer as a guest but as something claimed. They fled upward through winding tunnels until the light shifted from crimson to faint bronze. Each turn seemed unfamiliar, as if the forest were rewriting its own paths. Ariel stopped at a pool of mirrored sap and knelt beside it. Look, she said, voice breaking. In the reflection, Elias saw not himself, but two forms. The Thorn King and his own image fused, their eyes identical. He is not dead, she said. He dreams through you. Elias recoiled, the truth unraveling through him like thread in water. The forest had chosen not merely a listener but a vessel. The whisper in his head, soothing, constant, was not the forest's voice anymore. It was the Thorn King remembering how to speak. Ariel began to speak of the Thorn King's fall. Once the guardian of the forest's dream, who sought to end its pain by holding every sorrow within himself. The dream turned to poison, and the gold dimmed to blood. You were never meant to wake him, she said, voice trembling. Elias listened, but part of him was already drifting toward the whispers rising beneath her words. The forest's voice and the Thorn King's voice had become one. Visions flared, roots curling through sky, rivers of light reversing their flow, golden leaves falling upward. The forest's heart throbbed like a wound beneath his ribs. He whispered back before he realized it, and the ground beneath them responded with a soft, living hum. Listen to me. Ariel's voice cracked like a branch under weight, but the forest no longer obeyed her. Roots surged from the ground, circling Elias protectively. The Thorn King's whisper poured through his veins, gentle and terrible, promising release from pain. Elias turned toward her, eyes now luminous gold, tears reflecting the forest's sorrow. "He doesn't want destruction," he said softly. "He wants to wake." Ariel's face paled. "If he wakes," she whispered, "the dream dies." Above them, leaves began to fall upward again, reversing gravity in slow, silent chaos. The air shone with fractured light, as if reality itself were shattering into memory. The forest roared. Every leaf turned to flame for a heartbeat, every shadow stretched and split. The elder tree's voice boomed through the air, crying in a language older than sorrow. Ariel shouted for Elias to run, but he did not move. The Thorn King's presence pulsed within him, steady and calm amid the chaos. He raised his hand, and the storm of light froze. Silence fell so absolute that even thought seemed to pause. "I see now," Elias whispered. "The dream cannot forget what it loves." The forest dimmed, its brilliance receding into stillness. Ariel fell to her knees, her dagger slipping from her grasp. The boy stood unmoving, eyes half closed as the last leaf of gold disintegrated into ash. The golden stillness shattered. From the silence, a tremor rose, a heartbeat too vast to belong to any living thing. The forest convulsed, shaking dew from its leaves like tears. Elias stood at the epicenter, every pulse of light beneath his skin flaring brighter. Ariel struggled to her feet, shouting his name, but the sound dissolved into the roar of awakening roots. The Thorn King's voice filled the hollow, ancient, mournful, triumphant. The dream no longer slept. It unfurled through him, binding memory and matter. Elias felt his veins become rivers of gold. He was both vessel and bridge, the dream's rebirth and undoing. Around him, trees bent toward the sky as though yearning to escape the ground itself. He heard the Thorn King's whisper again, not as possession, but as memory shared. "We wanted to save them," the voice said through his pulse. Visions unfolded, a time when the forest dreamed freely, its guardians singing life into every leaf. Then came sorrow, a grief so deep that even the light wept. Elias fell to his knees, clutching his head as the vision consumed him. Ariel pressed forward through the storm, her cloak snapping like a wounded wing. "Elias," she cried, "you must let it go." But the dream refused. It poured through him, molten and infinite, burning away the boundaries between him, the Thorn King, and the forest that remembered everything. The elder tree roared alive, its roots uncoiling like serpents of molten gold. Ariel fought to anchor herself, calling the ancient words of sealing. But the dream ignored her. It had found its heart again, and it would not be bound. Elias rose, his voice merging with the Thorn King's, forming a tone too pure to be spoken by flesh. The forest began to dissolve into its own light, every trunk, every leaf becoming a memory of what once was. Ariel saw it then. Elias was not being destroyed but rewritten, becoming the bridge between dream and waking. "If you finish this," she cried, "you will vanish with it." But his eyes were serene, and he whispered, "Then let it remember peace." The Thorn King's voice faltered. For the first time it sounded afraid. "You would bear my sorrow?" it asked, trembling within Elias's chest. "No," Elias whispered. "I would free it." The light condensed, then surged outward, flooding the forest in pure brilliance. Ariel covered her face, but even through closed eyes she saw everything. The birth of the dream, its corruption, and now its absolution. The roar quieted into a single tone, a note of release. Elias stood calm in the center, golden dust rising from his body like breath. The Thorn King's shadow tore away from him and dissolved into the wind. The forest exhaled, vast and clean. Somewhere distant, a bird sang for the first time in centuries. When the light faded, Silence returned. True silence, not the charged breath of something waiting. Ariel lowered her arm. The golden forest was gone. In its place stood a barren hollow bathed in silver dawn, the air thick with drifting motes of ash. At its center, Elias lay still, his body faintly luminescent, veins of gold frozen beneath his skin. She knelt beside him, pressing a trembling hand to his chest. A heartbeat answered. Slow, steady, but no longer entirely human. Around them, the first shoots of green pushed through the ash. The forest had died and been born again. And somewhere within its newborn roots, the dream continued to whisper his name. Days, or perhaps seasons, passed uncounted. The forest no longer whispered. It merely breathed. The golden storm had subsided into a soft hum beneath the earth, and the air smelled of rain and memory. Elias woke within the hollow where light once raged, his body weak, yet pulsing faintly with warmth. The silence around him was not emptiness but peace, as though the world held its breath to avoid disturbing him. When he moved, the soil glittered where his fingers touched. The dream had quieted, resting inside him like an ember rather than a fire. He could feel the forest's heart beating faintly within his own, and though loneliness pressed against him, it was gentle, almost sacred. He wandered through the remnant woods where gold had turned to silver bark and pale moss. The air was weightless, each breath like stepping into a dream, remembered rather than lived. When he touched the trunks, faint warmth answered, as if the forest still recognized him. In the distance he heard no whisper, only the echo of his own footsteps. It was a strange kind of quiet, both gift and burden. Every sound he made felt like language returning to the world after long exile. He realized that silence could sing, and that within it, the forest dreamed not of him, but through him. By twilight he found the remnants of Ariel's shrine, stones arranged in a spiral around a hollow where once the elder tree had stood. Upon them lay her cloak, folded with impossible care, its runes now dim. A single feather of light hovered above it, flickering gently before dissolving into dust. Elias knelt, realizing she had returned to the dream she guarded. The silence deepened until it felt alive, listening with him. "Thank you," he whispered, not to be heard, but to become part of the quiet. Somewhere beneath the soil, the forest stirred, not in grief, but in remembrance. Night descended like ink spilled over glass. Elias built a small fire, though the forest no longer felt cold. He watched the flames dance, each flicker revealing faces from memory. Ariel smiling faintly, the Thorn King dissolving into wind, the elder tree's vast gaze. They were no longer haunting him. They were becoming him. The silence around the flames was complete, yet he sensed the forest listening to his breath, answering in rhythm. He realized the whispers had not vanished. They had changed language. The dream now spoke through heartbeat and flame, through root and star. And so, he whispered back, not in words, but in understanding. Dawn returned without warning, soft, unhurried, filling the hollow with gold that no longer burned, but breathed. Elias rose and felt the rhythm beneath his feet. The forest's new heartbeat, steady and slow. He understood that his role was no longer to listen, but to tend. He pressed his palm to the soil, feeling warmth rise in return. From the ashes of the old dream, new roots spread, quiet and sure. The forest no longer dreamed in gold. It dreamed in green, in renewal. He smiled, the silence around him now full of promise, and began to walk toward the horizon, where light met mist, carrying the dream within him. Years drifted quietly through the valley like forgotten songs. Seasons came and went, yet the forest did not fade. It transformed. Its gold had softened into hues of green and silver, its leaves whispering in tones, gentle as memory. Travelers spoke of a place where dreams lingered in the air, where the wind carried laughter not of ghosts, but of the living. In this renewed forest, a man walked the paths that once swallowed a boy. The whispers did not haunt him now. They conversed, calm and familiar, like old friends remembering together. He felt the forest breathe with him, and every step echoed as part of its song. The dream had found its balance, neither awake nor asleep, but alive. He paused beside a familiar hollow where ash once lay. Now, young saplings grew thick and bright, their roots intertwined in living harmony. He knelt and pressed his palm against the soil. A warmth answered, steady and calm. Beneath his hand, faint whispers rose, not desperate, but joyous. They spoke, not in words, but in breath, like the sigh of wind through grass. "I am here," he murmured, and the forest replied with a soft shimmer of light across the leaves. The dream no longer needed a guardian. It had become its own keeper, and yet it still remembered the boy who once heard its sorrow. Sometimes, when dusk spread violet through the canopy, he heard laughter, gentle and ethereal, from the farthest glades. He followed it once, out of nostalgia more than curiosity, and found himself before a pool that mirrored the twilight sky. Upon its surface, ripples formed without touch, shaping images of a woman cloaked in velvet. Ariel's face smiled from the reflection, her expression neither ghostly nor divine, but simply kind. "You kept your promise," her voice said, softer than the breeze. Elias knelt, eyes damp but calm. "We kept it," he replied. The forest rustled around him, as if bowing in agreement. As years passed, others found their way to the valley. Travelers, wanderers, children who heard faint music in their sleep, all drawn to the forest that dreamed in harmony. Elias welcomed them quietly, guiding without claiming, teaching them to listen rather than command. The forest responded gently to every heartbeat that entered with sincerity. Once, as dusk deepened, he stood among them, watching how their laughter wove through the trees, like sunlight returning to the air. The forest was no longer bound to sorrow or memory. It had become what all dreams long to be: shared, living, and endless. One morning the forest awoke singing. Dew turned to gold again, not in fire but in warmth. From the heart of the valley rose a new tree, its trunk pale silver, its leaves shimmering gold at the edges. Elias stood before it, feeling the familiar hum within his chest. "You remember," he whispered. A soft wind stirred, carrying his words through every branch. For the first time in years, he closed his eyes and listened deeply. The forest's voice was calm, endless, complete. It dreamed not of sorrow nor of loss, but of balance. As sunlight crowned the horizon, Elias smiled, knowing the dream would continue long after him, awake and everlasting.